Last Pint Productions presents the New Way podcast. The New Way contains adult content, but since this is one of our special edition short episodes, we don't have time to record one of our comedic adult content warning masterpieces. I mean, we could have, in about the same amount of time it took to tell you we wouldn't, but we didn't. So there. Listener discretion is advised.
That was perfect. Perfect. Mr. Wood, do you know anything about the art of film production?
Well, I like to think so.
That cardboard headstone tipped over. This graveyard is obviously phony.
Nobody will ever notice that. Filmmaking is not about the tiny details. It's about the big picture.
The big picture?
Yes.
Then how about when the policeman arrived in daylight, but now it's suddenly night?
Are you people insane? I'm the director.
Everybody wants to be naked and famous. Everybody wants to be just like me. I'm naked.
Will you help teach me about this? What is it? A new way?
Hello and welcome once again to the New Way podcast, where we break down pop culture so you don't have to. I'm Matt Schenk in the driver's seat with Ben Wilson to my left.
Hi.
And Nick Santa Croce on my Skype. How's it going, Nick?
If you want to break down pop culture yourself, you know, we don't discourage you from doing so. It's
Nick,
just more convenient.
No, we actively discourage anyone from getting their own information. We control the flow of information. I'm sorry.
Obey.
Wait, no. We are not the government. I'm sorry. That's not correct. Welcome, of course, to a special edition of...
There are no campaign finance laws when it comes to pop culture opinions.
Not at all.
One of us.
Welcome to a special edition of the New Way podcast. Our special edition podcasts are just like our normal ones, only a lot shorter. They're short-form episodes focused on an actor, an actress, a location, a director, or other straightforward subject. There's no preamble and only half the dick jokes you would get in a normal episode. Your mom is going to love it. Today, we are doing
Not by design, just by time constraints.
Exactly. We will still get as many in as we can.
So wait. Nick, or sorry, Matt, what type of short form are we doing today?
Well, I was about to get to that, Ben.
Okay.
But thanks.
Nick, what kind of episode are we doing today?
Well, I'll tell you. Today, it's a spotlight. You want me to go?
Do you know what Do you know what the first one is?
It's a spotlight on the
director,
celebrated director, Sam Raimi.
There we go. We should. I need to. If we had more time on these, I would just have like someone record like Jeopardy, where they have the guy like, I'm on location here, and he's just like Sam Raimi. Yes, we are.
Hold on. Hey, Matt.
Yes.
How do you spell? Is it Raimi? R-A-I-M-I?
Yeah, IMDb.com/RAIMI.
Samuel Raimi. Got it. I'm ready.
Loudest keyboard sound effect I've ever heard.
That was real. I just Googled.
So today we're doing
Xena Warrior Princess?
Oh man, we have broken every rule of our short form podcast immediately, if not sooner, and that's wonderful. Yes,
Who wants to hear a dick joke?
We are going to start with Sam Raimi for one of our director spotlights this week, and this was kind of spurred a little bit by some news that Ben shared on the podcast about a property that he is being discussed as the director for, which is the Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness sequel to the hit Doctor Strange movie from the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yes.
Sam Raimi is he's no virgin in the superhero realm. He spent 9 years of his life directing 2 watchable Spider-Man movies and one Spider-Man movie that makes Nick so angry he will punch a baby. We do have a baby today just to see if it will actually happen. But so let's.
I'm sure we'll get into the comic book side of things with Raimi. But I mean, ultimately, I think that most people who know Raimi know him as what he started as, which is a horror director. He basically kind of created, or at least was one of the co-creators of sort of a new movement of horror in the early 80s, where it was a lot of like body horror and a lot of special effects and stuff like that, but almost on a streamlined budget. And
he was the inventor of a physical piece of film equipment, the Samocam.
Yeah, the Samocam, right.
Which created it was basically the horror Goodfellas, a tracking shot through broken doors and windows, not breaking stride. Sort of like 1917, but more impressive
That's terrible.
because it went through a door.
So I'm legitimately, I'm gonna confess this. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay,
this
so
is news to me.
the
So maybe our
the
listeners
Sammy
like
cam is
more
kind
on
of like
this.
the Snorri
Oh, wow.
cam, but instead of it being focused on the actor, it's focused on the ideas in Evil Dead. It was kind of this malevolent spirit that was going through the woods, and so it was going through. It was knocking down trees and going through,
And it's on the
woods.
ground floor. It's like on the floor of the.
yeah.
the-
So basically, it's kind of this fast moving sort of like gimbalish sort of deal where the camera operator is running at basically full speed, jumping over obstacles. As these obstacles are moving out of the way around them. Going through doors, going through windows. I mean, the whole thing is rigged or whatever. But it did create an effect that in 1981 with the original Evil Dead, 81, 82, really hadn't been seen and was so stylized because it could be utilized to both a horror effect and also a comedic effect.
And I mean, one of the biggest successes of Evil Dead was that it was so visceral. And that shot, which was really a vision from the director, really made that happen. And I mean, Evil Dead in college for me, I loved Raimi. I mean, I loved Quick and the Dead. That was one of my first DVDs that I bought.
Hold on now, partner.
We'll get there.
Hold on.
We're gonna get there.
I don't know if it holds up, but in college, like specifically, I just got into film school, and you're trying to like immerse yourself. And he was someone I latched onto right away because he didn't seem pretentious. He was the horror answer to someone who was still had a lot of ingenuity and vision. And style, but wasn't going to be said in the same breath as Scorsese or Wes Anderson or anything like that going into film school.
Well,
just real inventive and fun.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting because I came to Raimi very, very late. Probably really right around even the Spider-Man movies. I had seen Army of Darkness when I was younger. I didn't know it was a Sam Raimi movie, and I had not seen Evil Dead. Ravenloft 2. I saw Army of Darkness was my introduction to Sam Raimi. It's the first thing I ever saw, which was like
It was
good one.
Army of Darkness was my first Sam Raimi film as well. However, it sent me on a spiral, a backward spiral. I watched Evil Dead, not Evil Dead, but Army of Darkness for the first time. I think in like 1995. I still remember I was at my friend Doug Message's house, who was the drummer of the Protomen. And I was probably 13 at that point, and he was probably 11. And I was laughing so fucking hard watching that movie. I thought it was the funniest thing I'd ever seen. I thought it was so cool, which stylistically, it's so far away from what Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 do. It's definitely its own thing in the trilogy, in the Evil Dead canon. However, I immediately went back and watched Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2, and I was just like, this guy is a fucking master. Like, I just thought he was so cool and had no idea.
Also, if you're a preteen boy, you like Sam Raimi stuff for the most part.
Yeah.
Well, and it's kind of interesting, like Sam Raimi is kind of his rise to things, and I actually I just realized looking back on this, I was a little bit remiss on this. Army of Darkness was the second Sam Raimi movie I saw.
Your first was Darkman.
My first was Darkman. Very correct.
That was everybody's...
Which is a big video store hit for me, and it had Benny from L.A. Law. And it was basically the actor that plays the bad guy in Darkman played like an autistic guy at the law firm on L.A. Law. So it was this big like deal because like he played this guy so convincingly that a lot of people thought that it was like a challenged person playing the role on LA Law. So he fought for like his entire career to get out from underneath.
And he was in
this,
Darkman.
So he goes to Darkman and plays like the complete opposite. Everyone's like, yeah, we don't like this at all.
So Darkman was not a great hit. It was not a big movie.
But it was the first time he worked with Danny Elfman, and that comes back into play when we get into Spider-Man.
Yeah, 100%.
It's a great, by the way, a great theme for Darkman. That was probably my second.
He worked with Elfman before Spider-Man.
Darkman.
No, I mean, but in between then he did. He did. Yeah.
On
I
what?
said
He did the music. Didn't he do
the first time he worked with Danny Elfman was
Oh,
Darkman.
I thought you said it comes back to him in
Darkman.
Spider-Man.
Who? Yeah.
Darkman.
He did the music for The Gift too.
Oh, I didn't know he did the music for The Gift.
Danny Elfman is
In the gift. Yeah, he plays the fiddle player.
Does he? Did he write a theme for Katie Holmes' breasts? We'll get back to that. We'll get there. We're gonna get there. We're gonna get there. I just wanted to ask him.
Talk about prepubescent boys.
So it's interesting. So Army of Darkness is so different tonally from a lot of the other stuff that as a kid, I knew directors pretty decently, and I would kind of follow things movie to movie a little bit.
Right.
But like, I never put it together, Army of Darkness, with some of the other Raimi stuff that he went on to do, because even Evil Dead, which is a shared universe and character, Army of Darkness to me felt like Monty Python. Like, it was so broad, and so zany, and I loved it.
This is my boomstick.
So
Do you know who did the theme for Army of Darkness?
No.
Danny Elfman.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Oh shit! I did not know that. So that's amazing. So
Just the theme.
what's interesting is, so I watched
Just
Army of Darkness.
the Deadite theme. That's what it was. The March of the Deadites. The theme that was done at the end of the movie when they were all marching on the castle. That's what was done by Danny Elfman, which makes sense.
So I know Elfman. I've seen Darkman. I've seen Army of Darkness. I'd watched A Simple Plan, which I really, really like. I just kind of, and we're gonna get to these movies individual. And then we get to Spider-Man, which was a big deal, and everyone was. I remember, like, the geek community was very excited, more so than me. I didn't really know. I didn't have like a horse in that race, but everyone was very excited to see this Sam Raimi vision of Spider-Man. And I remember my buddy,
and that was back in the days where they made a trailer with no footage in the movie. They made the trailer specifically to drive Spider-Man fans out of their minds in the theater.
and then they had to pull it because it was Twin
Spider-Man
Towers.
catches bank thieves escaping in a helicopter on a giant spider web in between the Twin Towers.
Yeah.
And they recalled it after September
It's
11th.
crazy. But I remember at that point, my buddy Helgi goes, "Oh, like, you need to watch early Raimi." And I was like, I was trying to think. I'm like, because I knew of Evil Dead at that point, and I knew Army of Darkness, but I realized, I'm like, I'd never watched these movies. So I sit down and I watch the first Evil Dead, and I'm like, I'm just not responding to it. It just something. I came to it too late.
Come on,
and
Matt. Who doesn't like seeing girls raped by trees?
It was just no. It was. And then I got to Evil Dead 2. And I go, oh, he just remade Evil Dead, but it's more like Army of Darkness, which I responded to better. Like, I was still in my learning. This is 2002, where I'm in my, like, online film school, where I'm studying Kevin Smith dialogue. I remember it was tough for me to get into those movies so late. Like, I think if I'd seen them earlier, and it's hard. They stand up for certain things, but they don't for other things.
I will hardly disagree with you. I think that Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 stand up perfectly well against time because they are time capsules, and the practical effects in those movies still look better than a lot of the CGI I see nowadays, in my opinion.
And you know what? Those practical effects, another filmmaker I got into at the same exact time for the first time, just like Sam Raimi, was Peter Jackson. From the Bad Taste films, he started real low budge, but he innovated his own effects. A very visceral camera style, and for a long time, Peter Jackson was kind of, you couldn't even compare him to Sam Raimi because Sam Raimi was so much higher, more respected from just doing a schlocky horror film. And
it's obviously, you look at Dead Alive. I mean, Dead Alive is almost a straight up. It's a spiritual successor to the Evil Dead movies.
No, and that's a great comparison to put those in. And you're everything you're saying is right. It's like I said, it was part of me was just watching this movie and it felt old and it felt dated, and I liked parts of it. Yeah, I think having those real effects, and Ben and I actually even went to the Evil Dead musical at down at Nova and sat in the splash zone where we were slowly rained down upon with like
fake blood,
like water with like a tinge of paint in it.
Slayer wrote a song about that, Matt.
Did they?
Yeah, it's raining blood.
It's raining blood. Yes. Yeah. Well, this was more just like a weird drizzle of wet paint.
Except for my wife.
Hallelujah.
Except for my wife, who was sitting in the splash zone where she just got fucking drenched.
It was.
And then we go to a bar afterwards, and she's just soaked and covered in blood. And we're all just like, let's get a beer. And she's like, let's go home.
Yeah, we were at that
prom was great, honey.
I think those movies are interesting, and part of it is also that I was not a big horror. I'm still not a big horror fan.
Sure.
And so that it's kind of where I like what Raimi's. I like when Raimi takes horror tropes and shot design and things like that, and then he made maybe one of my favorite horror movies of all time that we're going to kind of get to. But
okay, so let's compartmentalize it. Let's stay on Raimi horror.
Basically, what you're saying is horror's great. Just has to be the right horror.
This is I'm just waiting for the right horror. That's all I am. I'm just waiting for the right one.
But let's compartmentalize it because
Yes.
a lot of people will discredit the original Evil Dead, which obviously the original Evil Dead it was made for about less than $500,000, like $400,000. Had limited distribution, but became a huge cult classic, which enabled Raimi to make Evil Dead 2, where he had kind of his string untied a little bit more and was able to do a little bit more creatively than he wanted to, and also introduce the humor. Because I would argue that Evil Dead 2 is the funniest horror movie of all time. It does such a great balance of just this really wild, crazy humor between these sequences that are actually genuinely horrific. And I'm not talking about the creature effects and stuff like that, but I'm just talking about building suspense and the camera work and kind of balancing. And it does this. Raimi does a thing that I think he established very early on in his career, where he builds these tense moments, and then the pop comes out where it happens, and then it immediately disarms you because it's so silly. And it takes you right to the next scare or to the next laugh moment. And it's like a roller coaster ride. It really is. It's as close, I think, as you can get to a true filmmaker's actual theme park ride, where it's like, we're going to get you right there, and then we're going to hold you on the edge for a second, and then we're going to let you go. Oh, no, we're going to stop. Oh, no, we're going to let you. Okay, scream. Now laugh. Okay, now everything's okay.
That's how Ben says when he's edging.
Jesus.
Sorry. Did I go too far? Did I cross the line? No, but I'm glad Ben said that. I'm sorry that I said that. I'm glad Ben did, because that is what encapsulates Raimi. It is very visceral, and he's got that punchy scene that kind of comes out of nowhere and grabs you and doesn't let go. And when we get into Spider-Man, I wish he had done, when they announced he was going to do Spider-Man, I was so excited that we'd bring some of those sensibilities, Ben, into it. Yeah. And my biggest problem with the first movie is that it didn't happen enough. Ironically, I didn't like Spider-Man 2, but the Sam Raimi being Sam Raimi happens in Spider-Man 2. And it only happens in one scene in Spider-Man 1.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
a straight horror, visceral, quick cut, fast-moving roller coaster, like you described. That is such a hallmark. That's like Quentin Tarantino's trunk shot. You know,
sure,
that is all Sam Raimi.
The coolest thing I can say about the original or the first Spider-Man that he did was that I had no idea until like 2 years ago that the scene where Tobey Maguire catches everything on the tray was actually done practically
After
after like
takes.
50 takes or something like that. So he actually did that. And I was like, that's kind of cool that Raimi was like, no, we're doing it like we did these other movies practically. We're going to do this fucking effects practically.
Dykstra had enough on his hands making the first Spider-Man CGI to animate food falling on a plate.
So anyways, I just wanted to establish like Raimi was this really talented horror director. I think that pretty much everybody in the industry knew him as this very talented horror director.
Like an it horror director that comes on the scene and turns the genre on its head. I feel like Cabin in the Woods did that, and that movie in a large way I think is a love letter to Sam Raimi.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
100%.
They have the shot of the first shot of the cabin is on the floor of the forest.
So let's keep it with horror, because I feel like you were going to talk about one of your favorite horror movies of all time, which is one of his more recent films.
Well, and this is a kind of
Raimi went a long time without doing horror.
Yeah, and I want to get into that '90s run that he had.
What about his partnership with the brothers? Partnership with the brothers.
I want to get back to the '90s run. So let's talk about the horror. We're on horror. Let's talk about what he did with horror and how he continued with that horror kind of.
Yeah. So
are we going post Coen Brothers?
Yes. Yeah. We're going back to it.
Yeah. We're gonna come back. We're gonna come back.
But fuck the Coen brothers. Let's go.
I think what's interesting. So one of the things I'd like to watch with filmmakers, and it's sad because it's happening more and more. I always like to see what a filmmaker does after a big stretch of something big, something very high profile. So you've got like Rian Johnson does Star Wars and then comes out with Knives Out, which is his like palate cleanser after the big studio movie.
Right.
And you've got Edgar Wright spends years working on Ant-Man and it falls through and he does Baby Driver. Right. And all of these directors that kind of run, go these things that run. And Raimi does Spider-Man for what's almost a decade. You figure that the first Spider-Man must have had a massive amount of pre-production and figuring what they were going to do with that. And that movie came out in 2002. He runs through Spider-Man 3 in 2007. So he spends 10 years doing nothing but Spider-Man.
And many of those years regretting the fact that he made the decision to make Spider-Man 3.
Exactly. One he didn't want to do with a villain he didn't want, and just everything, it was not what he wanted, but he winds up doing this because it makes money, and that's how it happens a lot of times. And so 2 years later, his palate cleanser for the Spider-Man trilogy is Drag Me to Hell. And Drag Me to Hell is such
Great analogy.
A delightfully straightforward,
It's very macabre
horror movie. And I love that it pulls no punches. And
it drags you, in fact.
Yes, well, and you should know where this movie is going. But so many movies subvert a trope or they're playing around with a trope, and Raimi
He got me.
By actually leaning into it surprises the fuck out of you in that movie because you're trained at this, you're leading
Spoiler
toward
alert. Spoiler alert. Yeah. Ben saw it coming. Didn't you?
I did.
There we go.
I knew it. You son of a
But you
bitch.
remember, you watched that for the first time with me on my urging because you were just like,
that's right.
because you were like, I've gotten so far away from like the Raimi thing, and I was just like, trust me, you're gonna want to watch this movie. It was when it was in 2010. It was when
your first place with Beth.
Yeah.
Oh, I do remember that. Wow.
Yeah, we watched it together.
I loved it. I loved the hell out of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great movie.
It is. Damn it, Nick. Nick, we only have 45 minutes for these episodes. We just can't afford you. You gotta keep it to 3. I give you 3 an episode, and that's it. You're at 17. No, you're at 17 already.
I got 2 more.
Anyone out there, if you are looking for just a great horror movie, whether you like horror movies or not, I'm not a big horror fan, but it is so.
You know what it felt like to me? It feels more. There was a scary stories to tell in the dark movie, but to me that feels like a American folklore ghost story horror, not a Evil Dead horror, and that showed me something. That showed me a little range as a subgenre.
No, and it's great because you've got this, the ingenue character, and she's not a bad person, but she's not a great person, and she's just she has this one interaction where she's got to kind of be a bitch to somebody. And that's her movie. That like it's literally just the comeuppance for one single moment in one single day that really just ruins this girl's life.
Yeah.
Because she's ruined someone else's life. And it basically kind of gets the curse.
So
we should move on and just highly suggest all of our listeners watch
Drag Me to Hell. Although I will say really quickly that I actually, without consulting schedules, during the Fort Lauderdale Film Festival this year, I saw that Drag Me to Hell was going to be part of the midnight series, and it was 10 o'clock at night. So I bought 2 tickets for me and Matt to go see it, and Justin Long was going to be there and was going to talk before and after the film. And then Matt was out of town.
Yes.
So I ended up giving the tickets to Jeremiah Erickson, who gave them to one of his friends. and they went by themselves. I'm very sad that I missed that. And
really bummed about that.
I will say that my wife and I had an argument, as close as we get to an argument, where she was just like, "Why would you want to go meet Justin Long?" I was like, "Who doesn't want to meet Justin fucking Long? He's Justin Long.
What the fuck?
He's the James Marsden of waiting."
She's like, he's like a D-list actor. I was like, "Oh, D-list actor and B plus A minus actor in your heart. Come on.
So you've got Mortal Kombat.
I love it.
And Justin Long.
That was all right.
Yeah,
This is bullshit,
exactly.
man.
I
This is
know.
bullshit.
I'm sorry.
Sorry,
It's
Justin.
the reason why I only work on Macintosh.
Listen, if you haven't been a Justin Long fan since Galaxy Quest, then you have not been paying attention. That's all I'll say on that one. But yeah, watch Dragon
Or
Me to
Zack
Hell.
and Mary make a porno.
Yeah, it's fucking great. But yeah, so let's kind of, and that's really, other than revisiting Ash versus Evil Dead, which he did in the TV series,
which is amazing.
which is a great show. It's very much Evil Dead 2.
Very evil. It's Evil Dead 2 through the
Yeah.
entire thing.
Yeah, it's a really great watch. Love they did a pretty good job of sticking the landing with it too, but it's a really fun. He directed the pilot episode of it and produced the rest of it.
So let's go back to the rest of his career,
Yes.
which happened right after Evil Dead 2.
Darkman.
Can we real quickly, because this blew my mind as a college student when I got into Sam Raimi, that he even had a connection to the Coen brothers. The Evil Dead cabin makes a cameo in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Yeah.
And he worked with them on Blood Simple and collaborated with them behind the scenes, uncredited for many things, I believe. And I remember that blew my mind finding out that they were so close and had actually worked together, because I didn't see a Coen Brothers influence. He really carved his own path, but they were they were tight, I guess, at one point in time.
Yeah.
You see that?
And then you
Coen
watch
Brothers
one
influence?
movie and you're like, it all makes sense now.
But do you see that the Coen Brothers influence on him, or Sam Raimi influence on the Coens?
Have you seen A Simple Plan?
Well, that's the one that they worked together on. I mean, once they separated themselves at a certain point. Do you see that influence in either of their work? I don't see it. I think that it was kind of interesting that their paths converged at one point in their careers early on, and they went off and did their own thing.
I think that they're very similar in that they were very ingenious directors who had very clear vision, who could do what they wanted to do on a small budget, and then were able to keep the spirit of what they were doing once they were able to become established directors.
Yeah.
So I think that they're similar in that respect, and what we were about to talk about, I think, is kind of the middle filmography of Raimi in the 90s, where a lot of people will say that Raimi was a middling director. He was one of those directors that established this horror tone in his early career, went to Hollywood, make Darkman, which failed, did Army of Darkness, which didn't do well critically.
It
But
did sound like you said Dartman, and then I just started thinking of like a Mega Man movie about Dartman. But
Mega Man, get equipped with darts. Boom, bing.
But then was kind of a director for hire for a few years, and a lot of people will say that it wasn't until Spider-Man that he really reestablished his career, which is the exact antithesis of my argument. I feel like his strongest three film run is in the 90s.
well, and I think let's just very briefly. I kind of want to address what Nick's kind of talking about with the Coen brothers and Sam Raimi. I definitely feel that there's more.
DNA.
I think there's more than a passing resemblance in the Coen brothers often dialogue is very like a play, especially things like Hudsucker Proxy, which Sam Raimi has a cameo
Right.
in as one of the Hudsucker board members. But I think there's definitely an over stylized. It's almost like that Keystone Cops feel. It's like this. It's
Yeah, I understand what you're
very
saying.
kind of over the top, and even things like if you want to talk about influence the other way. So if we kind of talk about, I can definitely see Coen Brothers in Raimi things. I think the scene in Raising Arizona when they escape from prison is 100%
Raimi. It looks like
they're
Raimi,
coming
yeah.
out of the mud
Yeah,
and the lightning,
totally.
and they're clawing
Totally.
out, and it's just like
Yes, totally.
total thing. And I think
That's the most physical comparison for sure. I think they also just have a
similar aesthetic.
uncharacteristic- Well, not even so much. They are rare in the sense that they have a really unique take on horror. Whether it be just horrific events or murders or bad people, things that should be just straight up horrific, they find a macabre sense of humor and they make it their own.
Right.
But Fargo is littered with humor and just absolute. Next thing will be a horrific image of Steve Buscemi being fed into a wood chipper.
Yeah, and I would
They're
argue
fun.
Yeah, and I think that's another thing that whether it's an influence or not, the Coen brothers are very fond of bizarre deaths in their movies. And it's almost like it has become a trope that you're kind of waiting for.
Yeah, it's true.
In fact, it happens. And it's funny. Sometimes I'll get. I'm sure everyone, maybe not Ben. I do this. Like there'll be times where I mix up movies in my head as far as directors, just because it's styled similarly. So like Out of Sight is a
Steven
Soderbergh
Soderbergh,
movie,
yeah.
but it plays to me very much like a Coen Brothers movie in my head. It's the big ensemble cast or stuff, and there's a death towards the end of that movie that's like a guy's running up the stairs and trips. And the gun goes off
And
right
dies.
through his head. And it was,
Yeah.
and I remember, I think I was watching it with my brother, and he's like, "Oh, that's like a classic Coen Brothers, like just like that. You get these weird one-off deaths that just happen, and you're like, oh,
Yeah, like
shit.
the closet opening and Burn After Reading.
Exactly, yeah, which is,
Oh.
god damn, and that may
Spoiler alert.
may show up later on.
But we're not talking about the Coens, and we're not talking about Soderbergh. We're talking about Raimi.
It's okay.
No, I'm just joking.
Wow.
I'm just joking.
We
dude.
have 15 minutes, and Ben is on a mission.
I'm on a mission to talk about those
Right.
middle 3 movies in the 90s.
Note to self: cut out the last 5. Cut out the last 5 minutes and make room for a 2-minute dissertation on Katie Holmes Press in The Gift. And go.
Can we redistribute that to the "It's Pizza Time" scene in Spider-Man?
It's what?
Isn't
You want
that
to do
for
the
Spider-Man
pizza time?
2?
I think it's 2, right?
My God, "It's Pizza Time" is the whole basis of a whole subreddit, Raimi memes. A legion of people who believe that all other Spider-Man movies are trash and only the Raimi trilogy exists. It's hilarious.
Wait,
I
Wait, that's
highly
called It's
recommend it.
Pizza Time? That's not Ninja Turtles subreddit?
No, it's Raimi. It's Raimi memes, r/Raimi memes. But It's
okay.
Pizza Time is, let's just say, it's a heavy theme in the memes, meme theme.
I don't like this. Let's give Ben's been waiting patiently to do his run of 3 movies in the 90s by Sam Raimi. It's one in 95.
You know what those 3 movies are.
I do know what those 3 movies are.
They're A Simple Plan, For Love of the Game, and The Gift.
Well, The Gift is 2000. I thought you were going to do Quick and the Dead.
I think The Quick and the Dead is maybe Sam Raimi's worst movie.
Really?
Yes. I think it's perfectly cast. I think you have a wonderful cast, but I don't think that his aesthetic worked in the
I'm
Western.
going to confess, I have not. I'm very familiar with it, and I've seen parts of it, but I have not watched that movie.
It's not a good movie.
It's sort of like for me, it's sort of like Alf. I love Alf, but when I revisit it as an adult, it's horrifically bad. I've not rewatched Quick and the Dead, but I loved it in college, Ben. I loved it.
what every filmmaker
It's so
hopes
silly.
to hear on a podcast dedicated to that. It's like Alf.
but I think what you can discern, at least from Quick and the Dead, is that look at the cast: Leonardo DiCaprio, Russell Crowe,
Sharon Stone.
I mean, well, Sharon Stone was a bona fide star at that point. Those guys were nobodies at that point, really. I mean, like
he was doing Gilbert Grape, but
that was it.
yeah.
Grape was it. I mean, that's pretty much it. And the supporting cast is fantastic in that movie as well. There's tons of.
Are there any? I apologize. It's going to take us off
Go ahead.
Raimi for 60 seconds. Are there any poorly cast westerns other than old school shit with where you've got like, I don't know, what's his name, the old school cowboy playing Genghis Khan or whatever? Is something about westerns are very easy to cast?
There are lots of poorly cast westerns.
Recent ones,
I mean,
ensembles.
Nobody makes westerns anymore.
No, but I mean, every Western I see, I'm like, oh, that's it. Something about it. It lends itself to a good cast. I'll get off of that subject.
I'll tell you what. I got your answer for you.
Oh.
I got your answer
Oh
for you.
no.
Hopefully, it's not Silverado.
I fucking love Silverado.
Yeah, me too.
I knew you would. You would love Silverado.
We both like Silverado.
Kasdan, man, come on.
You love Kasdan.
I absolutely adore Kasdan.
Listen, I don't want to get too in the weeds here because I know this is a Sam Raimi
All right,
podcast.
what joke are you looking up? What is the punch? Just get to the punchline, Nick.
An American Tale, Fievel Goes West was abysmally cast.
That's pretty bad.
Not a Western. It's a cartoon about a Jewish mouse.
It goes to the
In the
old
West.
In the West.
Sure. Dom DeLuise returns. But what else do you get? You got nobody else. You got
All
John Lovitz in a throwaway role.
All right. Well, we made it to American Tail Goes West before Ben was able to talk about any of these movies. So let's hand the mic over to Ben for just
At my
60
personal
seconds.
pleasure.
So.
I only brought it up because I know we mentioned A Simple Plan, which A Simple Plan is the closest to the Coens
It's awesome.
that he's ever done. It's Bill Paxton, Billy Bob Thornton, and Bridget Fonda, and it's a straight up Coen-y, like these people find money on a plane that's wrecked in the middle of the woods, or is it a helicopter? No, it's a plane. And they take it back home, and then it becomes this like de-evolution of all the characters, basically turning all of their neuroses in on themselves while thinking also that other people are hunting them. And it's a perfect movie. It's really, really, really great for what it is. It's super streamlined. It's done in the dead of winter, and I think it was shot in Minnesota or.
And it's weird because
Dakota.
There's a trope for that story, that
Yeah.
kind of story, and it's so funny because I can name I think almost 5 right now, and we've talked about several of these in the podcast before. But you've got The Ref, you've got Trapped in Paradise, you've got the ice, not the ice storm,
The one you couldn't come up with a name of.
I forgot about it
before?
last time.
The
with
Ice Harvest.
Ice Harvest.
There's
there's
the one with Nick Cage and John Lovitz.
that's Trapped in Paradise.
That's Trapped in Paradise.
That's Trapped in
There's
Paradise.
this idea of these criminals stuck in a snowy town
Yeah.
and how they devolve. And
Fargo.
And they seem to either be they're either horrible
Yeah.
or incredibly well done.
Yeah.
And it's a very strange trope, but I love it.
Yeah, Simple Plan is one of those ones that's incredibly well done, and
Absolutely.
and was hugely critically successful too. And so critics loved it, but people didn't go see it. So then I think that maybe Raimi went to the money train and was just like, okay, I'm gonna do a Costner movie that's about baseball, and then does For Love of the Game. I will straight up say, I think For Love of the Game
Here we go.
is one of the best or most underrated sports movies ever made. It is so good. It's so good.
I'd like to remind you, this is a Sam Raimi podcast, not a Kevin Costner love fest.
No, it is because it's good because of Raimi. It's good because of Raimi. It's not because good because of Costner.
It's good because of 2 things, right? One is Raimi.
Costner and maybe Sam Raimi.
No.
So apparently, the reason why he got the job is because he did the whole thing with where Costner is pitching, and he says, "Clear the mechanism," and everything in the background completely fades into nothing. And so you have these shots where he has no crowd or whatever. It's just him and the hitter and the catcher. No umpire, no coaches, nobody else. And then he starts talking. And he's like, "Oh, hey, what's up? Okay, well now I'm ready to throw." And apparently that was Raimi's idea, and that's what he brought to that whole thing. And I thought it worked. That movie works really well. It is kind of a B movie, but it has some of Costner's best performances, and I think that
It's
has
got
to do.
it has a great fucking cast.
Yeah.
And I will always
J.K. Simmons.
Yeah,
and-
Simmons, John C. Reilly. I
Reilly.
love Kelly. I'm a huge Kelly Preston fan. Brian Cox. It's got a great fucking cast. I think that
Yeah.
the right director and the right cast can elevate any B movie. If they're all working together
Yeah.
and they're aware of what movie they're in. And I think
But this movie did not succeed in that goal. And it is maybe the most overrated sports film ever made.
it's no miracle, but it is. No, I believe I saw that movie. Yeah, that came out. I would have been watching that when I was up at UF. So that was one that was like on on HBO or something like a lot of the time. But I like.
Listen, Nick, I would think that somebody who played second base his senior year and didn't have a single error at that position would understand.
Wait, I always heard that.
For the
I
love
was-
of the game.
I always heard
That
that
we
Nick never
understand.
made it to second base.
Oh, that was in college.
I physically made it to second base because Ben is correct. I was a starter at the Carver Center for Arts and Technology Wildcats.
By the way, when I turned back to Nick, it has clearly changed time of day and has now just gotten dark in Nick's room. I don't know what's happened over there, but
no, I was just gonna say I find that movie fantastic, but then he of course curtails that into The Gift, and The Gift is a straight up Raimi movie that is also kind of a whodunit, kind of an Agatha Christie sort of like weird, where you have a basically a psychic medium who's the one who's playing sort of like this weird whodunit tale, but that casts all of these people against type, and it works so well. Keanu Reeves against type as this terrible redneck, you know, and having Greg Kinnear against type eventually, spoilers, this awful bad guy, and Katie Holmes against type as not the good girl, but a dirty girl.
As topless Katie Holmes.
It's a fantastic.
No, and you're right. That's a movie, and I'm always very curious to, because I never really know how much of it is the casting director and how much of it is the director and how it's going. The casting of that movie is so deliberate that it seems like it is very much
Raimi.
These are the people I want them because it's going to make people think a certain way. And it's interesting also to watch, because that still happens today with other movies constantly, where you watch someone that has just come off a run of like I don't want to sort of spoil. I won't. I was going to get spoilers for a different movie, but I think like it is. Sorry, Nick.
What's the spoiler?
I can't. I just can't. I
Put
can't.
me out of my misery.
I can't. I'm sorry. I don't want to ruin it for you.
This is bad radio.
I know it's terrible radio, but no, The Gift is great. And listen, and the gift is probably his most watched movie. I'm joking about it a little bit, but it is true. The Gift was a gigantic deal on the internet in 2000 because Katie Holmes got topless in it, and it was like
she didn't get top. She got like naked.
I mean, but it is maybe one of the most like just everybody knew about that movie because this is the internet's early on where like people were still going to go see that in the theater, like or rent it. But see it.
Meanwhile, I went on the internet when my parents weren't home to look up Danny Elfman's cameo in it and print it out my binder.
Who is what's the name of the guy that plays Lumberg?
Gary Cole. Yeah,
Gary Cole. Like I still love the line in that movie where like he pokes his head in the bathroom, and Gary Cole and Katie Holmes are making out. He's like, my wife is here. She's like, well, you better fuck me fast or whatever. And they go into a whatever. And then he goes out of there. I was just like, I still remember watching that movie the first time. I was just like, shit. Like, they are going as far against type as they possibly can.
Gary Cole got to eat. You got to just, you got to love it.
And Katie Holmes didn't want to wait for her life to be over.
Oh my God. I can't. We have so little time, and it's just.
All right, that's two. I got one more.
You've had way more than two. But
if there was if there was a video element here, I would just Dawson sad cry.
I don't want your me. That's three. I'm done.
All right, that's it. Nick's on mute for 60 seconds. So
gone in 60 seconds.
So we've covered early Raimi, we've covered 90s Raimi, and we've skirted around it a little bit, but I believe we really do need to talk about Spider-Man Raimi.
Yeah, we have to.
And so previous to Spider-Man, we've talked about, he did do Darkman, which is a very strange.
Nick is
staring at Emma Watson. I wonder if he's muted us too. It seems like he can't hear us. Can you hear us, Nick? No, he's muted us as well. He went full on darkness mode.
Oh, I'm sorry. Were you guys talking? I muted you. I know it's a real dick move, but I did it anyway.
First of all, I have never once muted you. Anyway. But
how much did you hear?
But I'm going to do it right now. No, we were. So we said we've skirted around it, but we have to talk about Raimi Spider-Man to kind of wrap up our podcast. It's his highest profile series of movies. there is a differing opinion in this room and on Skype about the benefits or merits of each of these movies. We all agree 3 is hot garbage. It's not good. I don't know what is happening over here, but Nick is just like, I don't know. He's made memes out of us.
You don't have to announce everything. I made a mistake.
I don't know. All I see is things popping up on the screen. I have to reference it.
I took a screenshot by accident and it sent it to you. I don't know how
of
you
my
did
penis? I mean, my face. That's the thing on camera, and not my penis. Anyway,
I don't know why I did it. I'm sorry. I'm trying to
Spider-Man.
get back the full screen.
So I made Nick rewatch Spider-Man 2 about a year and a half ago.
Okay, that makes sense. Well,
And
you were here.
there was a little bit of a, I wouldn't say you flip-flopped on it at all, but there was a little bit more of a appreciation maybe for 2.
No, I absolutely made a huge backtrack. No, you're right. I'm saying I absolutely backtracked on that, and I still think it's bad. However, it is punctuated by the best moments of Spider-Man, and specifically Dr. Octopus, that has been made in a Spider-Man film. The scene that I was talking about earlier, right, where he really infused a true sense of horror. It happened once when the Green Goblin gets impaled in the first movie for about 20 seconds. But in Spider-Man 2, there is an extended sequence where they're trying to save Dr. Otto Octavius on the surgical table. They think he's knocked out. He comes to and just brutally murders every one of the surgeons and doctors working on him. The lights are swinging.
Well,
it's
even
lights
better.
are exploding.
It's even better than that because it's actually not even him. It's his.
The
tentacles have their own kind of their own personalities, and they are protecting him from these doctors that are going to try to extricate it. And it's like and in the sequence that happens even before that is also great as well. When the accident happens and the wife dies with the glass, and you see the glass shard coming to her eye and the reflection of it, and they've set up that relationship fairly nicely over a couple of scenes.
That was a theme in the Evil Dead remake, glass in front of an eye.
That seems amazing.
Also, it's talk about tropes and subverting them, right? It takes away that all too common, we have a real relatable villain that starts off great, and the whole plot revolves around winning them back to the light, right? But in this case, you could win Dr. Octopus back into the light. He can want to stop being a bad guy, but at that point, the arms have already taken on a mind of their own.
Yeah, and
so it was a scene that horror had to be amped up for you to buy the fact that even if he comes to and wants to turn into a good guy, it doesn't really matter because he's not calling the shots anymore.
Yeah, I think the only for me, and I prior to Nick rewatching that, and because I remember famously on Ben's bachelor party, we're hanging outside. At that point, I think we smoked at that point. We were all outside drinking beers in an afternoon, and comic book movies come up, and I talked about X2, and I go, I know, I'm sure like everybody's like, I go, my favorite part of that was Spider-Man 2 because everyone loved Spider-Man 2, and Nick and Ben looked at me like I was a fucking troglodyte, and it was the first time I'd
we're
ever
the odd man
encountered,
out, for sure.
But to me, it was like the first time I'd ever encountered that, and these were two people whose opinions I respected. So I was like, "Oh my god, I'm fucking dumb again! Like this is terrible."
I really hated that movie at first. I really hate, and the thing is,
we watched it together, man, and we walked out of that movie and we were so disappointed.
I was so upset. But
both I think you and I have warmed on it. But I think it was we expected it to go in the exact opposite direction that actually went in, which is
look, Dr. Octopus is perfectly cast by Alfred Molina.
Yeah, it's great.
But keeping his shirt off on scenes was very terribly misguided on Raimi's part.
Every scene with him in it, especially as Dr. Octopus, as the villain, were gold. Whether it's the fight on the train sequence,
right,
or the surgical table, or him doing the first shareholders meeting, the power of the sun in the palm of my hand, right? That stuff was great. But the thing is, they underutilized him. And most of the movie was a badly told love story that felt awkward with just zero chemistry between Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst. And that is what stuck with me. Just it was cornball in a way that didn't serve Spider-Man at the time. And like Ben said, I warmed on it. I still think it's bad, but the good scenes are really.
And there are, and even in the
and that's Sam Raimi. Yeah, that's Sam Raimi.
And even in the things that suck, there are like little bit like the romance is terrible, but the one bit with her and Jonah Jameson's son, who she's engaged to, and she makes him try to do the upside down kiss, like to draw. I was like, that to me was such a funny way to reference the fact this was a and that's kind of a thing to think about with Raimi as we close this discussion, is that it's hard to have an iconic film moment in your career. There are not a lot of them. Everyone knows them when they see them. They're often aped or parodied or whatever. Yeah. But Spider-Man 1, the upside down kiss, is an iconic film moment. It is an instantly recognizable moment on film that's a director.
And so I would argue that Raimi has two of them. One of them being that, and the other being the shot ground up of Ash
of
Ash putting this cross in the ground. Like, you know what I'm talking about?
No way. It's the cellar door and the head of the Evil Dead possessed girl peeking through it.
Okay, maybe.
I'm
just saying that, that shot where he like shoves the cross in the ground that they did every single Evil Dead movie, and it's been done in like every single horror movie since then.
I think you guys both hit it earlier on. I think it's the shot. It's the shot on the ground. It is that camera angle on the ground.
Okay,
I tried to do it for my Halloween party video I did with my little Steadicam on the ground. It's a lot harder to do than it looks like. It's not very easy. And it did not look good when I did it. But yeah, I think that shot is that point of view shot is where it's at. But we want to thank Sam Raimi for all of his wonderful movies he's given us. We're sorry we ran out of time to not talk about Oz the Great and Powerful.
I'm
almost kind of happy that we didn't quite get there.
Let's not be sad.
Let's
just hope.
And also a prolific producer of some things that might surprise you if you hop on IMDb on your own.
This is good. I like that. Go out and read the book. If you want to know more, read the IMDb.
And hopefully... I think that we all hope that Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness will happen with him, because it will be fun to see Raimi at his full powers with no restrictions, with the power of Marvel behind him. I think that could be really cool.
And Tobey Maguire in the classic Raimi suit. Multiverse, baby.
What's kind of crazy, just so to look forward to this, if he does this in 2021.
I think Spider-Ham's going to be in this movie.
I would love Spider-Ham is in everything. And he still needs to be voiced by John Mulaney because it's wonderful. But
it'll be him. Live action.
Just so this is kind of important. Raimi has not had a major film release since Oz the Great and Powerful in 2013.
That's because it didn't do well.
So we've been 8 years without a Raimi movie. I would love to see him come back with a Doctor Strange,
like a hardcore.
So hopefully that happens. We thank you so much for listening to this special edition of The New Way. Oh boy,
are we not going to talk about Ted Raimi at all? I mean, not even in passing.
We'll do that on the next character.
I believe the episode's called "Directed by Sam Raimi." Ted Raimi's more famous and more important older brother, younger brother?
I have no idea.
We don't even know. Nick, do you know?
He used to be my neighbor.
He used to be your neighbor?
Yeah, Ted Raimi.
Well,
he was in Xena.
So was Mr. Rogers.
We wasted 60 seconds. I would like to have given some real time to Ted Raimi in a different... We'll get to Ted Raimi in our character actor podcast.
He's like the Clint Howard.
He is the Clint Howard of Sam Raimi. God damn it. All right. Thank you.
I was going to make that joke earlier, and I was like, no, I'm not going to do that.
So much for listening to The New Way. We got you. If your commute's just an hour, we got you there under time. So thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next time. Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.
Ooh.